Let me ask you something. You've studied the charts. You understand support and resistance. You know how to read price action. You've tested strategies. You've felt that rush when a trade goes your way and that sickening drop when it doesn't. After all that knowledge, after all those hours, do you still struggle to stay consistent? Why do you take profits too early? Why do you let losses run? Why do you break your own rules you know work, and then watch the market prove you should have followed them? Here's what Mark Douglas understood that most traders never will. The market is not your problem. Your mind is. You see, the market doesn't care about you. It doesn't know you exist. It's not out to get you, and it's not rewarding you. It's simply expressing itself moving based on the collective beliefs and actions of all participants at any given moment. But your mind? Your mind is wired for survival in a world that no longer exists. It craves certainty in an environment defined by uncertainty. It needs to be right to protect your ego. It fears loss like a physical threat. And every single trade triggers these ancient survival mechanisms that have nothing to do with profitable trading. Mark Douglas spent his life studying this paradox. And what he discovered was revolutionary. Trading is not about being smart. It's not about having the best system. It's about developing the habits, the psychological habits that allow you to execute without fear, without hesitation, and without the need to be right. Most traders fail not because they lack knowledge. They fail because they never develop the mental habits that transform knowledge into consistent action. Tonight, I'm going to share 5 fundamental shifts in the way profitable traders think and operate that separate those who make it from those who don't. These aren't tips. These aren't strategies. These are mental rewiring protocols, identity shifts, the forbidden psychology that makes trading feel effortless instead of agonizing. And every single one comes from the profound wisdom of Mark Douglas. Let's begin. Here's a truth most traders resist. Any single trade is meaningless. I know, that feels wrong, especially when you're in it. When your money is on the line, when you're watching every tick, that trade feels like everything. But Mark Douglas taught us something critical. You don't know what's going to happen next. You can't. The market is too complex, too influenced by variables you can't see or control. So what do? You stop trying to predict the outcome of one trade. You start thinking in probabilities. Let me explain what this really means. When you think in probabilities, you accept deeply, fundamentally, that your edge is nothing more than a statistical advantage that plays out over a series of trades. Not one, not 5. A series. Imagine a casino. Does the casino worry when someone wins at roulette? No. Because the casino knows that over thousands of spins, the math works in their favor. They have an edge. They trust the edge, and they let it play out. You need to become the casino. Mark Douglas said it perfectly. Every moment in the market is unique. The patterns may look the same, but the outcome is never guaranteed. Your job is not to know what will happen. Your job is to execute your edge consistently and let probability do the work. This habit removes emotional attachment from individual trades. Think about it. If you believe this one trade determines your success, you'll trade with fear. You'll tighten your stop too much. You'll take profit too soon. You'll revenge trade when you lose. But when you think in probabilities, something magical happens. You stop caring about any single outcome. You don't need this trade to win. You just need to execute it properly, because you know that, over the next 20, 50, 100 trades, your edge will reveal itself. Losses don't devastate you. Winners don't inflate you. You become neutral, mechanical, consistent. This is the first habit. Think in probabilities, not in predictions. Now let's go deeper. Mark Douglas said something that haunts most traders when they first hear it. If you're afraid, you haven't truly accepted the risk. Let me repeat. If you're afraid, you haven't truly accepted the risk. Most traders believe they've accepted risk because they put money in a trade. But acceptance isn't about placing the order. It's about being completely okay with the worst-case scenario before you enter. Here's the test. If your stop gets hit, do you feel emotional pain, frustration, anger, the need to get it back? If yes, you haven't accepted the risk. Profitable traders, the ones who last, who compound, who win, define their risk before they enter, not just on paper. Emotionally, they internalize it. They make peace with it. They say to themselves, I'm willing to lose this specific amount. If it happens, it changes nothing about me, my strategy, or my future. This is the cost of doing business. And here's what happens when you truly accept risk. Fear disappears. You stop hesitating. You stop second-guessing your entries. You stop moving your stop-loss because you can't afford to lose. You execute with clarity because you've already processed the worst outcome and made peace with it. Mark Douglas understood that most trading mistakes over trading, revenge trading, freezing at entries, come from unresolved fear. And fear comes from unaccepted risk. The market will do what it does. You can't control it. But you can control how much you're willing to risk. And when you own that, when you accept it fully, you reclaim your emotional power. This is the second habit. Accept risk completely before you risk anything. Next habit is emotional detachment from outcomes. This one cuts deep. Why do you trade? For money, yes. But be honest, there's something else, isn't there? You want to be right. You want to prove you understand the market. You want that validation, that feeling of mastery when a trade goes your way. And that, according to Mark Douglas, is precisely what destroys you. Because when your self-worth is tied to your trades, every loss becomes personal. It's not just money. It's proof that you're not good enough, that you don't have what it takes, that you failed, and every winner, it inflates your ego, makes you feel invincible, which leads to carelessness, overconfidence, and eventually another painful loss. Profitable traders detach their identity from outcomes. They truly understand, that the market's movement has nothing to do with who they are as people. A loss doesn't mean they're stupid. A win doesn't mean they're geniuses. The market simply expressed itself, and they participated. That's it. Mark Douglas taught that the need to be right is one of the most toxic psychological patterns in trading. Because the market doesn't care about being right. It cares about probability, about risk-reward, about execution. When you detach emotionally, you stop taking trades to prove something. You stop holding losers because admitting you're wrong feels unbearable. You stop exiting winners early to lock in, being right. You trade the setup. You manage the risk. You follow the plan. And you let the market decide the outcome without it meaning anything about you. This is the third habit. Detach your ego from your equity curve. Here's where most traders get stuck. They think discipline is about willpower, about forcing yourself to follow the rules, about white-knuckling through temptation. And for a while, that works. But willpower is a finite resource. Eventually, you get tired, emotional, frustrated, and that's when you break the rules. Mark Douglas knew this. He taught that true consistency doesn't come from willpower. It comes from belief alignment. Let me explain. When you believe, not just intellectually, but in your bones that following your rules protects you, discipline becomes effortless. It's not a struggle anymore. It's simply who you are. Profitable traders don't try to be disciplined. They are disciplined because their identity is built around consistency. They've rewired their beliefs. They've internalized that their edge only works if they execute it properly. Breaking rules doesn't just risk money. It risks their entire psychological foundation. Discipline isn't restriction. It's freedom. Think about it this way. If you believe that sticking your hand in fire will burn you, You don't need willpower to avoid it. You just don't do it. Trading is the same. When you deeply believe that deviating from your plan creates chaos, you stop doing it. Not because you are being good, but because it doesn't align with who you are anymore. This is what Mark Douglas called mechanical consistency. Not robotic, not emotionless, but habitually aligned with your principles. This is the fourth habit. Build discipline through identity, not effort. And now, the final habit. The one that separates amateurs from professionals. Faith in the process. Here's the thing. You can have a winning strategy, one that's been back-tested, one that works, and still sabotage it. Why? Because you don't trust it. After a few losses, doubt creeps in. Maybe this doesn't work anymore. Maybe I need something better. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. So you stop executing. You tweak the rules. You go searching for the next shiny strategy. And you abandon your edge right before it before itself. Mark Douglas observed this pattern endlessly. Traders with solid systems destroyed by a lack of faith. Because here's the truth. No strategy wins every time. Not one. Every approach, every edge goes through drawdowns. Losing streaks. Periods where it feels like nothing works. But profitable traders? They trust the process. They understand that their system has a long-term expectancy. They've tested it. They believe in it. And they execute it, win, lose, or draw, because they know that over time, the math works. They don't judge their strategy based on the last 5 trades. They judge it over hundreds. And they have the patience and the faith to let it breathe. This is psychological maturity. This is what separates someone who trades for decades from someone who blows up in months. Mark Douglas said, "The consistency you seek is in your mind, not in the market." When you trust your process more than you fear temporary outcomes, you unlock a level of calm and confidence that most traders never experience. You stop chasing. You stop doubting. You stop quitting. You execute. This is the fifth habit. Trust the process. Let the results unfold. So let's bring it all together. 5 habits, 5 shifts, 5 pieces of the puzzle that transform how you think, how you feel, and how you trade. Think in probabilities. Free yourself from the tyranny of needing to be right about one trade. Accept risk completely. Eliminate fear by making peace with the worst-case scenario before you enter. Detach emotionally. Your worth is not determined by what the market does. You are not your trades. Build discipline through identity. Stop relying on willpower. Become the kind of trader who simply doesn't break the rules. Trust the process. Have faith in your edge. Let it work. Stop sabotaging yourself with doubt. These aren't strategies. These are ways of being. And here's the final truth that Mark Douglas spent his life teaching. Profitable traders are not born. They are built. They are built through repetition, through belief work, through confronting their psychological demons and rewiring the patterns that no longer serve them. The market doesn't need to change. Your strategy doesn't need to change. You need to change. And when you internalize these 5 habits so deeply that they become automatic, trading stops being a battle. It becomes a practice, a craft, an expression of mastery. The market will always be uncertain. That's its nature. But you can become certain. Certain in your process. Certain in your discipline. Certain in your ability to execute, regardless of outcome. That's the edge. That's the difference. The market is not your problem. Your mind is. So build the mind of a profitable trader. And let the habits do the rest.